I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange. Hey there, spooky nerds, and welcome to Talking Strange, the Paranormal Pop Culture show. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Sagers. And you know, between Halloween and Thanksgiving, it's a weird time. It's a fun time, but all the spooky nerds out there, like myself, we're still in the spooky season vibe. We're on that sugar high, having such like good treats and still talking about like all of our Halloween activities. But we have right around the corner all the sumptuous flavors of fall. We got pie, we got turkey, all that stuff is happening. So it's a really good time to talk about food and spooky things, and it's a great time to dig into this book right here. It is Food to Die For: Recipes and Stories from America's Most Legendary Haunted Places, and the author is a dear friend of mine, Amy Bruni, who you know from the hit series Kindred Spirits, the Haunted Road podcast, and now leading the Paranormal Circle, where she explores the supernatural through live investigations, expert Q&As, haunted webcams, and exclusive discounts. Amy Bruni. Hey, how are you? Thanks for
Hey,
joining.
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Before we get into sort of the meat and potatoes of the book, and there will be a lot of food puns, the just as far as the presentation of this book itself, it is gorgeous. This is a gorgeous book. It's like got everything. It feels like a big, hefty book. It's got these amazing photographs in there, a lot of stories. It's an incredible presentation.
Well, thank you. I obviously I concocted the idea for this book and put together all the recipes and stories and history, but like the actual design of the book, there was an entire design team behind it. And I said to them, I want the cookbook to look colonial, gothic, and witchy. Those were my like three words. And I did a vision board and they went in studio for 4 days and made every recipe and shot it. This was in Tennessee somewhere. And every day they would send me the dailies at the end of the night. And I was like in tears at how just gorgeous these photographs were. Like you could frame these and put them in your house. And so that part of it, like I hats off to them. I can't believe it.
It's maybe not a lost art because I know there's obviously a lot of cookbooks out there still, such as this, but I do recall kind of a time when it was just more commonplace to have these really nice presentation cookbooks that had the utility. You would actually make use of them, but they just look so nice on your shelf as well. Were those things that you had growing up or even now, like those really lovely presentation kind of cookbooks?
Yeah, I mean, for somewhat being a child of the 80s, and I'm sure you can relate to this, we had those cookbooks with those like weird gelatin molds
Yeah.
with like with ham and stuff in the green jello. But the presentation was there. I still have my Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. My mom gave me that like red and white checkered binder that's like ingrained in our memories. But also from that time period, like I have another cookbook I just found by Vincent Price, where he's like the most bougie chef ever, and just these huge elaborate dinner parties. And so yeah, I love kind of like going back to that heyday of cookbooks. And I think right now theme cookbooks are huge, just in general. But like and I'm partial, but this one's just so pretty.
Yeah.
You know? So the cover doesn't even look like a photo. People are like, "Is that a painting?" I'm like, "No, that is a photograph." And so I am happy to be part of that, renaissance of
Yeah.
or return of the beautiful cookbook.
Yeah, and this is a great companion to that Vincent Price book. That is, and that is an excellent one, that Vincent Price cookbook. It's so above kind of the I loved, we had when I was growing up, we had those kind of tattered we had the good cookbooks, and then I've since acquired a lot of good cookbooks, but we had like the tattered kind of churchy ones that were bound by like a plastic kind of spiral thing that was cracking off because it had just been around for so long. It was just tattered and falling apart. So
Yeah.
there was that era too.
But I
Uh,
love those books. Like
yeah.
actually a lot of these recipes came from books like that, like the Alcatraz sugar cookie recipe came from like a warden's, it was like a compilation of recipes by like employees' wives from Alcatraz, and so I'll find those in historical societies and stuff, and I'll still, if I can buy them, I will buy them.
Yeah.
And there are treasures in those books for sure.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to that. That Alcatraz one was one I was thinking about as well. But before we get into that, right at the top of the book, you do dedicate it to Lizzie Borden, and I was curious about the story with that. I mean, you talk a little bit about her meatloaf, but why does Lizzie get the dedication right up top?
So she inspired the entire book. Many moons ago, a few years ago, the Fall River Historical Society posted an index card. It was a recipe card that Lizzie wrote herself for her meatloaf recipe, and it said Lizzie's meatloaf on it. And they were like, "Can you believe we found this? This is actually Lizzie's meatloaf." And so I looked at it, and like, first of all, I was like, that doesn't sound very good. But like, but I also was thinking, I thought about that correlation between just scent, like smell and taste and memory and history. And I just kind of thought, like, wow, like if you eat this meatloaf, you're eating something that was served in the Borden house. If you cook it as written, the Bordens ate this, you're smelling how their house smelled at some point. Like you were literally like almost bringing them back to life in a way. Like you're experiencing something exactly as they did, which I feel like is so much more kind of, it's just so much more visceral than just like looking at old photos or looking at old artifacts, and it just gave me this idea, like how many times can you relive history by like truly just preparing and eating a meal exactly as they did. And we do that all the time. When you have a recipe passed down from grandma or, they might not be with us anymore, but the second that you taste that, you are right back with them. And so it just kind of inspired me. And I love Lizzie Borden and everything about her. And so I thought, it's just only appropriate. Like that little light bulb went off when I saw that card. So this book was for her.
Yeah. Yeah, the meals eating is such obviously is a sensory experience, but it's also that communal experience. It's bringing people together and meals themselves, I mean, they are like ghost stories because we remember the great ones, we remember the bad ones, and we tell stories about them, we trade them, and then invite other people to share those stories. So they are kind of like ghost stories in that way. They live on with us. And that Lizzie Borden one, that was one that lived on because she passed it down to her friend, right? That's where that index card came from, right?
Exactly. She was passing it on to someone else. And, people ask me for recipes. I love to cook. And so I think about it so much more now when I pass a recipe on. It's not just, there's more to it than, just, oh, here's this thing I cook sometimes. They're asking for that because they enjoyed not only the meal, but maybe a memory with you at the same time. Like, I don't know. I find food to be very spiritual, so.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the other element. I mean, you dedicate it to Lizzie Borden, but there's also this very sentimental dedication and reference to your mom and her Caesar salad and how that was also that's something you lived with that kind of disappeared. So that recipe, first off, Caesar salad, that's an interesting one as far as the thing that someone is remembered by.
If you knew, so my mom, it was so funny. My mom became obsessed with this Caesar salad. Like she was perfecting her Caesar salad. And she made it so much that we really were like, enough with the Caesar salad, mom. Like,
Yeah.
and it was just, but she made it so garlicky and so like she like diced up her anchovies and like it was all in there. And we did love it, but like your eyes watered when you ate it because it was so garlicky. And but we never really got the recipe because she just kind of formulated it over time. And so when my mom passed away, like we none of us had thought to ask her about our Caesar salad. And so then as I was researching for I wanted a recipe from Sheboygan Asylum because the son of one of I don't know what to call them. But usually in these asylums, a family lives there, and they're not a warden. They're like the head of the hospital.
Yeah.
But so in this case, this family lived there, and this and this boy grew up there. His parents were running the hospital. He grew up there, and he would go into the cafeteria, and he would watch them making all this food for all of, like, the patients and inmates, as they called them, and so he wrote a cookbook and he became a really great chef. And so I was researching him, and I picked his Caesar salad, and I made it, and I was like, holy crap, this is my mom's Caesar salad to a T. And it just like instantly like brought her back for me. A lot of things bring my mom back, but like that in particular, I was like, wow, this Caesar salad, like this is exactly my mom's recipe. I had to like double the garlic, but but it was exactly like her. And I just instantly was transported back. And now it's like, it's one of my most cherished recipes in that book.
And that kind of brings up a interesting point that I think sort of similar to paranormal investigations. There's these places where there's history that could be quite tragic or violent, it can be very traumatic. However, there's still these moments of joy, and people still tell jokes, they prepare meals, they engage in that activity of life. So as you're looking at recipes from asylums or prisons and places with sort of darker history, was there anything that did surprise you that was like, this is just a recipe of joy that came out of this place where maybe bad things had happened?
Well, I can think of two. We already mentioned it. The sugar cookies from
Yeah.
Alcatraz are high on that list. They're delicious. Just like when you make them, make sure you refrigerate the dough for 6 hours, like the recipe says, because they won't turn out unless you do that. And then the other one that I was very surprised by was I call it the tuberculosis soup, but it's the vegetable soup. That was served to tuberculosis patients, and it's associated with Waverly Hills. And it's a very simple recipe, very easily made, but it's very good. And so we've made it a few times. It freezes very well. And so it looked so basic. I just didn't expect that. And I think sometimes we're victims, especially us Americans, of just like totally over seasoning things and over complicating recipes. And that one in particular, I was like, this is just a great basic vegetable soup, and
Yeah.
we like it. So,
Yeah, I mean, and also I think when like the Velisca house cornbread, I believe,
mhm.
when you're talking about locations where these heinous crimes took place, have you thought about how maybe when you're presenting this recipe, this item that is intended to bring joy as well as sustenance, do you think that maybe you're effectively adding maybe some positivity to not that scene, but like injecting a little bit of brightness into an otherwise dark story?
I think in some cases, yes, like especially the Velisca house, just because I feel I've always been a big proponent of not defining that family by their end,
Right.
like when you go into that house, just being very cognizant of the fact that like, yeah, one night something absolutely horrific happened here, but there were many years of like joy and memories and holidays and birthdays and all of those things took place here too. And I feel like those moments are more energetically powerful than the way someone died. And so, yes. So, yeah, I do feel like, you think about them making cornbread and like everyone loves cornbread, but then some of the recipes in the book too are, like I say that they're 80% delicious and 20% very historic. And so, you have recipes like Nutriloaf, from Eastern State
Mhm.
Penitentiary, which was basically designed to provide nothing but nourishment and sustenance and nothing like flavorful. It's absolutely disgusting, but it's in there if you want to, make it for your children one night when they're behaving badly. I don't know, but like, and then there's a recipe in there for hardtack, which is again the same thing. Like this was from the Old City Jail in St. Augustine, but sailors also made hardtack just to exist, to get across the ocean. And so these are not good recipes by any stretch, but it does, kind of tell you like, it gives you a bit of history, but not necessarily in a delicious way.
Yeah. It's not really, I was thinking about this. There's not a lot of ghost stories directly related to people eating that I could think of, is there? Or, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to think like people that are where the haunting is surrounding the eating, or even like phantom food smells. Not as much of that. You get cigar smoke and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have investigated looking for smells of food in like kitchens and whatnot. A really interesting thing happened. So I don't know if you're familiar with Amanda Millette, Spooky New England.
Yeah.
So she was obviously there's a whole nightmare going on at the Conjuring House right now. But prior to that, she was working at the Conjuring House, and they there's a recipe in here for, I think it's Yankee pot roast, that Nancy Perrin, Andrea Perrin's mother, gave to us for the book, and she has actually since passed away. So I love that this is in there, right? But Amanda cooked that recipe in the house, and things happened.
Hmm.
Like it's like that was apparently like that was their big favorite meal. They had it every Sunday, like, and so it was interesting. Like it triggered activity. So it makes you wonder, and if you bring back some of this food to some of these locations, is that going to instigate activity in some ways? Does food become a trigger? So I don't know. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet.
I mean, as far as food being a trigger, I had already thought about this, but it really kind of leapt to mind while I was reading this book is the line from the beginning of A Christmas Carol. Scrooge is talking to the ghost of Marley, and he says, "Well, you might just be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of underdone potato. There's more gravy than grave about you." And so, the association between food and ghosts, at least in pop culture, is there. But that also made me think about, you have spent a lot of time on the road,
Mhm.
and there's been a lot of production time. Is there any kind of horror story meals that you can think of, maybe without sinking any business specifically, but some meals that we're like, man, I gotta go film tonight, and this whatever I just ate, this was horrible, and I'm gonna be haunted by this meal.
Uh, yes, that has definitely happened. I will say, without going into too much detail, there was a rule put on set on Kindred Spirits by the head of our production company. He would, what, because they order out every night. They pick a restaurant, and so he he finally was like, you guys are not allowed to have Mexican food." Like, he just was like, Mexican food and Italian food. He was like, absolutely not. He's like, Mexican food, there's always some sort of disaster among one of you or the crew members, or the Italian food, everyone's going to sleep. So, um, but yeah, that's I don't know. I traveled so much. I feel like I always got off pretty easy because I don't really eat meat, which is funny because I eat fish occasionally. So that meant like some of the meaty recipes in here, my writing partner, Julie, she got to test all the meaty recipes and stuff. But so I feel like I was never the one who got the food poisoning.
Mhm.
So
I mean, there's the foods that are going to yes, put you to sleep, that are heavy on the carbs. There's the ones that are going to perhaps lead to noisy situations. Just in general, like I feel like the not just pre-filming, but pre-filming during an investigation at night diet is a whole thing
it
because,
is.
I always joke that my stomach sometimes speaks whale, when
It's
it's
so loud. And
it's
I'm sorry, but can you imagine investigating with like Steve and Dave and Adam, like after they've all had burritos for dinner? It was like a whole new kind of torture for me. So,
Is there was there any recipe for the book that you had heard of and had a hard time tracking down? Especially because, when you think about it, even though we do pass down recipes, it's so easy for things like cookbooks to be discarded. because it's like, well, this isn't literature, so why would we keep this book around? So anything you'd heard of that you just had a hard time tracking down?
There were actually a couple that I wanted really badly, and I did not get. So sorry if you can hear, there's a plane going overhead. One of the ones I really wanted was I wanted the recipe from the Stanley Hotel for their red rum punch. Uh, and I contacted them, and like I have friends who work there, and I wanted it so badly, and no one would give it to me. So we ended up with a different recipe from there, a different cocktail. And then there was a restaurant. I'm not going to say who it is because I'm pretty sure they're going to be in the next book, but there was a restaurant that I work with a lot, and the owner was like, "Our recipes are proprietary," and I'm like, "You don't understand." Like, I don't think he like realized how big the book was gonna be, and I'm like, "You don't understand. This is gonna be great for you." But he was so like hung up on get it. It's a family business that's been in the family for generations, and that he did not want to give up a recipe for it, and I think he's regretting that now. But
I
so,
would say similar to cocktail recipes, tiki recipes, even if you know how a thing is made, the most amazing Mai Tai you've ever had, or Bloody Mary, Ernest Hemingway's Bloody Mary, it, it still doesn't keep you from going to that place and wanting to enjoy it in person,
A
is
hundred
my
percent, a
view.
hundred
So,
percent. Yeah. I think sometimes, I think just sometimes, I reached out to some of the recipes were just available out there, and, and I was able to get them, and a lot of them came directly from the locations. But I think sometimes people are just naturally suspicious about something new like that. They're like, that sounds weird, but like now they've seen it. So yeah, they can be in the next one.
what would be the Amy Bruni recipe down the for future generations to include in a book? What would you be leaving behind? Because look, it can also be a mixed bag. If, like as you said, you don't want to be remembered by the recipe that's not great but
Yeah.
historical. You want the good stuff. So, what's the Amy Bruni recipe for future generations?
It would absolutely be my butternut squash lasagna. That or my shrimp cocktail. I make a really fierce like shrimp cocktail with the perfect sauce, and that when people ask me for that recipe almost more than any other recipe from like parties and stuff. But my butternut squash lasagna is pretty legendary. And enchiladas in general. Like I am one of those people, I can just make enchiladas uh, with no recipe. I just make them up as I go, and like that is the most requested meal from my family. So I apparently like things in big dishes. That's
Yep, for the shrimp cocktail, I mean, to be fair, you're not making the shrimp part of it. So, what makes the sauce so great?
it's. But I am, so here's the thing, like it's the spices that you cook the shrimp in, like you have to boil it all together in the spices. It's unlike any shrimp cocktail you've ever had. And then the key to the cocktail sauce is you need a lot of horseradish and cilantro, believe it or not, and like a lot of garlic and lemon juice. Oh, I'm gonna make it for you. You're gonna
Okay,
love
deal. I'm very interested in this. The I also want to discuss, I mean, you've got other stuff going on. Obviously, the book is been very well received. I mean, I know it came out in July, but I really wanted to wait to talk about it with you until this season because it just feels
it.
yeah, accurate,
It's very
apt right
cozy.
now.
Yeah.
The but aside from that, let's talk a little bit about what you've got going on over there at the Paranormal Circle. I know I talked about it at the top of the show, but this has become a really interesting community for you to do these Q&As, do the investigations. So what's shaking over there, and what's in store?
So the paranormal circle is, it's something like I talked about for a long time, but I didn't want to do it until I could do it right. I didn't want to do like a Patreon or something. I wanted to create like a whole new interface. And so that's what we did. It's like its own freestanding interface, and it's a membership program. It's $8 to $10 a month, but we do at least 2 or 3 live events a month. There are, a lot of vlogs and blogs. There's a ton of discounts to paranormal retailers and other retailers. There's a private Facebook group. There's I'm sure I'm forgetting things. There's its own, they have their own merch. I mean, we just are constantly thinking of things that we can give to members. My biggest thing was I just wanted to create a community where people could talk and enjoy all things paranormal with other people who feel the same. And I can't. So many people have come up to me at events, like especially we were just in New Jersey. We met probably 1,000 people, and they were just constantly like, "Thank you so much for the circle. Thank you so much for the circle." Like it's just this really cozy little corner of the internet that we talk all things spooky, and it's been really fun. And we have live webcams in haunted locations, which people really like, and it's been awesome. It's turned out better than I could have even imagined.
Yeah. But not to stop there, you also have Historically Haunted, which is your new documentary. And, I know we've talked a little bit about the production of that, and then we finally have the trailer out there. What are you trying to do with this? How is this different than the ways other people have seen you on camera before?
Well, the first season, so we're already working on season two, but the first season is very personal for me. It's more than just like, it's obviously there's a lot of investigating going on, but it's also a little bit of an origin story too. And it gets pretty emotional because we go back to so when I was in high school, my family moved to El Dorado County, California. And it was one of those things where I hated it there. Like, this podunk town, this is terrible, you know? And so I left like as soon as I turned 18, I moved back to the Bay Area. But then a few years later, I missed my family and I moved back. And so it's really close, it's dear to me. And El Dorado is this little town that you drive through like on the way to Amador County or on the way to Tahoe if you got off the freeway to like use the bathroom basically. And so a lot of people drive through it. They don't realize that this was like a major mining town at some point that had like a population of 20,000 people and it burned down. And these are the buildings that are left. And now there's like a biker bar, barbecue restaurant and a convenience store and a Mason's Lodge and a few houses. And so we investigated the whole town, and I brought Amanda Paulson and Sarah Lemos. They are both West Coast based women who I really love and adore. And so it was fun to investigate with them and show them my town. And off camera, we all had, went to my brother's house and had dinners, and it was a really fun shoot. And I'm excited for people to see it because it's quite a journey, and it's really cool.
How does it, aside from sort of the personal nature of it, how does it mark a evolution for you, either as well, both as an investigator as well as a producer?
Well, it's all mine.
Yeah.
I created it, I produced it. I'm heavily invested in the editing process right now. And I think a lot of people are so hung up on the fact that Travel Channel is not buying new paranormal content right now because Travel Channel barely exists anymore, and they were so reliant on that. But I think that right now it's a boon for people who love the paranormal if they can just step outside their comfort zone of like network television and just like start exploring these streaming options because that's where TV is going in general, and I think we all know it. And so for me, it was great. I mean, I feel it's hard to say, but like it's crazy to me how much we were able to get done with less people and less money than you could ever imagine compared to a network television show. And I think it's going to be more emotional and real and genuine than anything you would get that had to go through that filter of a network. So I urge people, and I'm, me being someone in my 40s, no one under the age of 40 ever asks me where to, about like where to see paranormal television. It's all of us old timers who are like, I just need Discovery Channel. I urge you all to get outside of your comfort zones, and because there's already a lot of great stuff out there to watch.
Yeah, and I think to that point, it's there's I mean, I don't know what TV is anymore,
I don't
but
either.
but for people that have been kind of trained to look at traditional networks for paranormal content. Nothing wrong with that. Certainly, I've benefited from it as well.
Mhm.
But by doing it yourself, you are able to explore different ideas and philosophies, things that may not traditionally, from a network perspective, fit a narrative, because they're like, no, this is the story on this one, and we're going to stick with that one. Whereas when you're doing it yourself, you can veer off, you can come back, you can introduce different ideas, and it's all up for grabs for you, right?
It's insane. Like when I think back on it, like obviously Kindred is very important to me, and I hope that like at some point we're able to find a new home for it. And like I love everything about it because we again we're very much in control. But in this sense, like it's something as minor as me just being like, I want, Amanda Paulson and Sarah Lamos to come do this with me. Not because I thought they would be great on camera, but they are. But like, I'm like, I really like those women and they're on the same coast and this is going to work out logistically and everything. And I really want to work with them. If I had taken that to a network, like if I had been like, these are the two ladies I want to investigate with, it would have been the most convoluted, crazy process of vetting them. There would have been, people going, like, it would have been, people would have meetings over whether they were going to work or not. And then I'd be pulled into the meetings and they'd be like, well, we have these other people. We know you don't know them at all, but we're thinking they might be better. It would have been insane. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to bring them. And it's so freeing, it's very freeing. And it was also the, standing there and being like, hey, someone said that house over there is haunted, and us simply just knocking on the door and being like, hey, we're investigating. Do you want us to check out your house? Yes, please. That would never have happened on a network television show. It just wouldn't have. It's just
Yeah.
all of these hoops and logistics and there's so many hands in the cookie jar and everybody wants their say and a lot of them don't even like the paranormal. So
And also, like with this kind of structure of three women, it would then be turned into like it's the women ghost show. It's like, well,
I
or maybe
know,
it's
and
it's just the show that you wanted to do with the people that you wanted to do it with. And,
I
instead of
know.
like we need a guy because the element of like two guys and a girl or whatever it might be.
It was that, and that too. Like there would have been like, they would have like when I was, so even when I was thinking of investigators to be on like the show, I wasn't thinking of like people I want on the show. I was thinking like who could do this project with me. And it just so happened that like the two people I wanted to work with the most and who are the most qualified investigators who I've worked with in the past were Sarah and Amanda, and they were in the area. And like it wasn't like I was like, I need this to be all women, but that was an excellent byproduct of that. And I think it says something that I thought of them not because they were women, but because they were perfect for the job. You know what I mean? Um, but at the same time, like a network would have looked at that and they would have instantly been like, there should be a male counterpart or there should be, and it's like, but 70% of people who watch paranormal shows are women. I've seen all the demographics. Like, sometimes they want to look at other women doing it
Yeah.
alone.
Or just, other people that are just good, skilled, that's
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's it's a good lesson for people out there that look, if you want more of the paranormal, then you have to be willing to explore more. People are saying they
Mhm.
always want more of this and they want a different look. And why does it all have to be the same? Well, it's like, okay, now the job's, the content is there. So it's on the audience to embrace it and look for it and want more of it. It's,
Yeah, and it's some people could potentially be missing out. Like you don't, the thing about streaming or wherever, and I'm not saying we're ending up on streaming. Can't say where we're going yet, but um, the thing about it is like you don't need millions of viewers anymore either. So there's a lot of shows out there. If people are willing to do the homework and check it out,
yeah.
there's a lot out there.
So before we wrap up,
Hmm.
what would be, I'm just going back to the food element. What would be the I don't know. I got nothing. I thought I had a question and then it just like left
I
me.
never see Aaron Sagers at a loss for words. Something
I
must be
know
wrong.
it's shocking. Well, that's because the book is
I'm
just
gonna
so
take a sip of
good that
wine
you've
on that
covered
note.
so much
Cheers to
material.
you.
Cheers to you. Um, I don't know. I am excited to see more of these recipes come to light and for you to look into more of these things. And I mean, is there anywhere that you want to go, maybe less for the ghost story, but just to get in there and try some food and try some of those recipes?
Oh, there's a lot of those places. I really want to go international.
Yeah.
I think that, just big parts of other cultures is their food. And so I definitely see this going international. So that's probably my next step. And, I'll take any excuse to travel. So
Yeah.
there's that. Um,
And
yeah, I will.
literally, oh, go on.
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, I will say too, just real quick, I have to say, the one thing that we didn't really touch on, but has been amazing. I don't even notice. I try to repost them. Is how I guess I didn't even think this. It never dawned on me that this would happen when I made a cookbook, which is weird. But people make these and like make these really elaborate prep videos online and take beautiful photos and like review the recipes and like I am just floored at some of these like things that I keep seeing on social media from the book. And so they were really going crazy before Halloween, but I hope people continue to make things like that through the holidays because it absolutely makes my day when I see those videos.
Yeah. And I mean,
Hmm.
look, you can host like a whole theme party, dinner party with these various items.
There are theme menus in the back of the book. So we put them together for you. So
So there
we're,
you
you
go.
can
Host the
do a
dinner
Civil
parties.
War feast, a ghost town grub. So yeah, but actually, I think there is a giveaway in the future, like a little contest for people who are making like videos like that. So
Nice.
I think, according to my publisher.
Well, you're also holidays are coming up. You've got some goodies happening through Paranormal Circle in the book, or what's going to be coming up on that?
Yeah, I don't usually do a lot of merch online, but being the holidays, I'm doing like some really fun Black Friday specials. I ordered 200 books, and so I'm gonna do like a few bundles with like a food to die for apron, and like there's some like sweatshirts and stuff so that people can get them for gifts. And then we're doing like a yearly membership to the Paranormal Circle too that you can gift to someone. It comes with like an autographed photo and like a certificate that you can give someone. So I'm going all in this year, mostly because I'm not really traveling for once this time of the year. So I'm like, I'm going to be sitting at home. I may as well ship out 200 cookbooks.
Might as well fill your time with something. Yeah.
Yes.
Like you need to. All right. Well, the Amy, thank you so much for talking today. It's always good to see you and talk about
Yes.
all sorts of good stuff. And the book is Food to Die For: Recipes and Stories from America's Most Legendary Haunted Places. It's available now. It's a gorgeous presentation. It's great as a gift or for a gift to yourself. Treat yourself. Um, and Amy, I mean, Paranormal Circle, how can people just keep up with everything you're doing?
Just go to amybruni.com, and then I'm Amy Bruni on almost every social media platform at this point. So I'm very active on the socials and whatnot and very responsive. So
All right.
feel free to reach out and say hey.
Well, once again, my guest is Amy Bruni. I'm Aaron Sagers. This has been Talking Strange. Until next we haunt again, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.